I thought I'd take this time to share with you a speech that I recently gave in honor of this month's celebration of the contributions of blacks in American history. I hope that this speech will be as informative as it was for many of the individuals who were in the audience. And so, without any further delay, here is the speech. The land, new, unspoiled, cold and wet, black, red, yielding and producing, green, lush, nurturing, inhabiting. The people, tribal, global, working, toiling, laboring, fighting, making, thinking, developing, united. 1706, invading, the people, profiting investors. The land, Jamestown, settled land claimed by the people. English, Dutch, French, Scottish, Spanish, Irish, Europeans of mixed blood, blood of the Moors, East Africans, West Africans, seeping through their European offsprings. 1581, 500 African souls are imported to Spanish Florida at the order of King Philip of Spain. 1619, 20 Africans are exchanged for supplies by a Dutch to English Americans of Jamestown. African souls, indentured, free, enslaved. This land is my land. Sailing across the Atlantic together, separately, free, enslaved, the offsprings of Mother Africa arrived to the new land, some dressed in the attire of Europeans of dual bloodline, some desiring to embark on a journey of a new world while serving out their years before buying their own piece of new colonial land. But some children, stolen from the warmth of the rich earth to be locked into chains and stuffed into the cold, dark, wet belly of a cursed abyss. America is a land of many tales, a land of myths and legends, a land of many secrets. And one of the greatest secrets is the secret of you and I. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. The birth of a new nation has remained a recounted history of many blank pages, ignored realities, and shelved accounts. Yet when told in its wholeness, it is a beautiful story of faith, strength, a willingness to persevere against all odds, ups and downs, shames and guilt, forgiveness and redemption, defeats and triumph, ignorance and intelligence. It is a story of simple diversity, the diversity of people. The veins of this old lady named America flows with the blood of many long-forgotten names, some once famous and others seldom uttered, names of the offspring of Queen Africa. The shot heard around the world that sparked the American Revolutionary War claimed its first victim, a merchant seaman of African and Native American blood named Crispus Attucks. The first blood to spill on the ground in the birthing of this nation. A man, once a slave, who took control of his own freedom, refusing to accept the idea that he could possibly be the property of another human being. Attucks ran away from his Massachusetts master and set the course for his own life. On March 5th, 1770, Crispus Attucks fell to the ground with 4 other souls in what has been known as the Boston Massacre, the start of the American Revolutionary War. In more recent times, there are those who have determined to reduce Attucks to merely a name applied to a few schools and ignore the monuments erected in his honor as the first American to die in the Revolutionary War. For many, it may seem insignificant to ensure that Crispus Attucks always remain in the pages of American history. But this small piece of history that is soaked up in the rich soil of Boston is a reminder that we have always been human. We have always been a part of the birthing of this nation. And thirdly, we have always given our blood for the freedom of this land. As the call to take up arms rang through the colonies, many black Minutemen joined the ranks to ensure that America would soon be free from the tyrannical hand of King George III, fighting those notable battles, such as the battles of Lexington, Concord, and Bunker Hill. Some men pushing through with the knowledge that they were sacrificing their lives for the very existence of America. They believed in the freedom of all men. They were not poor, ignorant fools of no value, wallowing in the dark streets and being a burden on the 13 colonies. No, these were men with fierce fighting abilities for freedom. Men like Pomp Blackman, Prince Easterbrook, Peter Salem, Salem Poor, and Brasilia Lou. Men who were considered patriots and heroes of war for their shed blood or their willingness to stare death in the face in order to take the life of a British officer in battle. Men whose feats of heroism should be honored by every blue-blooded American patriot, but have gone missing from the pages of history. Despite many blacks willing to sacrifice their lives for so great a cause, rooted in the core of their love for America, with little reward in return, General George Washington relented to the opposition of allowing enlistment of black men into the Continental Army, consequently issuing an order to cease the enlistment of Negro men into the Army on July 10th, 1775. Yet, the willingness to give blood for the birth of this nation could not keep us from fighting alongside their English and European American comrades. Since the British were more than willing to allow blacks to come and join their side in the fight, Washington was forced to reverse his order in December 1777 and allow blacks to help his depleted ranks. The list of black brave men serving as soldiers and spies is long and worth seeking out because it is the missing truth of the narrative we call American history. But our account into the birth of this nation does not end with the retelling of war stories, bloodshed on battlefields, or the great secret spy ring in which we were a part of. No, we were great contributors to the infrastructure that allowed the great American cities to rival their British and European counterparts. We were businessmen and women, architects, literary figures, philanthropists, educators, preachers, and founders of new religious denominations that would become the backbone of the black community. James Fortune, a sailmaker, and store owner, would become a prominent voice in the African civil rights known as abolition. Creating a tool that would help maneuver large sales, he would become one of the wealthiest men in Philadelphia, that being of both white and black. Captain Paul Coffey was a prominent Boston shipmaker who assisted former slaves in resettling from Canada to Sierra Leone. Coffey was also a bit of a rebel in that he was willing to refuse to pay his own personal tax in response to the double standard of America's representation for all of her citizens. Inspired by the battle cry of the Revolution, no taxation without representation, Coffey insisted that blacks should be exempt from taxation. This defiance led to a law being enacted granting blacks within the state the privilege of other citizens of Massachusetts. Minister, educator, and writer Bishop Richard Allen founded the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the first independent black denomination, in 1794. He worked to upgrade the social standing of blacks by establishing Sabbath schools that would teach literacy classes to freed blacks. He also educated blacks in the area of political strategy. Along with Absalom Jones, they formed the Free African Society, a non-denominational mutual aid society that assisted fugitive slaves and new migrants to the city of Philadelphia. Absalom Jones was the first African-American priest in the American Episcopal Church. Benjamin Banneker, a man of great intellect and one of the few willing to engage in straightforward discussion with the founding father on the topic of the unexcused evil of American slavery. Banneker, a scientist whose works have continued to influence the scientific community today. Banneker's most notable contribution to the new nation was his completion of the surveying of the original boundaries of the District of Columbia, or Washington, D.C. Benjamin Banneker was very vocal about his political views. One of the most memorable offerings to the political conversation was in the form of a letter to Thomas Jefferson. In the letter, Banneker accused Jefferson of criminally using fraud and violence to oppress his slaves by stating, "Sir, how pitiable it is to reflect that although you were so fully convinced of the benevolence of the Father of mankind and his equal impartial distribution of those rights and privileges which had conferred upon them, that you should at the same time counteract his mercies in the detaining by fraud and violence so numerous a part of my brethren under groaning and captivity and cruel oppression, that you should at the same time be found guilty of that most criminal act which you professedly detest in others with respect to yourselves." The letter ended, "And now, sir, I shall conclude and subscribe myself with the most profound respect, your most obedient, humble servant, B. Banneker." The first book, published by a black woman, and the second by an American woman, was Poems on Various Subjects, Religious and Moral, by African-born poet Phyllis Wheatley. Arriving in America aboard a slave ship at the age of 7, Wheatley has been considered to be an important voice during the American Revolutionary and post-revolutionary period. Her mastery of speaking, reading, and writing in fluent English not only astonished the Americans, but also caught the attention of the famous philosopher Voltaire, who praised her for her very good English. In unapologetic ignorance, it has too often been said, both by blacks and whites, that this land, this American soil, does not belong to us, that this country is not ours. Well, I beg to differ. Too much of our blood has been spilled on her for us not to claim our right to ownership. Too much of our labor has afforded it to be called the greatest nation on earth. I do not wait for others to give me permission to claim her, for I do not need permission to what our ancestors inherited, despite much objection by their misguided siblings. For we are a people, not without a land, not without a language, and not without a history. For this land is our land. This language is our language. We have helped to shape and define it. We helped to give birth to this nation. So this month, we celebrate those Americans of African heritage who helped in the birth of this nation, and those who have helped to define her, the birth of a nation. And now we can stand. So as we continue in this year, I hope that we will take the time to honor and to celebrate our fellow American brothers and sisters. Let us honor one another by taking the time throughout this year to learn about one another, to learn our contributions. The contributions, may they be of our friends who are of Hispanic heritage, East African heritage, West African heritage, Southeast Asian, Middle Eastern, whatever it may be. Let us take the time to learn about those contributions that they have made to this nation. Is a great way in which we can build a better America. It is one way that we can tear down the barriers and the walls that have held us as a nation hostage, and our hostility, our inability to get along with one another, and our slight prejudices that we carry with us every day. So let it not be only this month of February that we take the time to learn about each other, to learn about other ethnic groups, but hopefully you are inspired to learn more about yourself, the contributions that your community has made, and to learn about other Americans and the contributions that they have made as well. Thank you for listening.